That's right. Back at it again, Full Custom Hot Dog here, doing another movie review. That's right. Today we're going to be talking about the new hit film, The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It. It's the third in the Conjuring series, but not in the Conjuring universes. There are now several spin-offs. You've got the Annabelle films. There's 3 of those. And then The Nun. And I think everyone had believed that film, The Curse of La Llorona, was in the Conjuring universe, and they just came out and said no. So I think a lot of people are thrown off by that. So officially, that is not canon, but I feel like in a lot of people's hearts it is, even if the movie wasn't so hot. Who cares? The movie's not that good anyway. You could watch it. I don't even remember it now that I think about it. I know I just saw it a few months ago. That's how a lot of these are for me, though. So let's talk about The Conjuring. Directed by Michael Chaves, who also directed La Llorona, and some other stuff. That's probably the most notable besides this. This is the first Conjuring film that does not have James Wan at the helm. He passed the baton over to Michael Chaves. He said, according to IMDb, he said he had noticed a certain flair in Chaves' understanding the kind of horror he wanted to generate in the third installment of the movie, which is interesting. The first half of this movie, the first 20 minutes, is a total banger. I liked it a lot. I was excited. You ever watch the first... Sometimes I'll do this. I'll watch the first 10 minutes of a movie and I'll go, man, this is amazing. How could this... This is going to be great. This can't get bad. This is only going to go up from here. And then it doesn't. This is one of those movies. Before we get too deep into that, though, what is this about? Well, IMDb says, the Warrens investigate a murder that may be linked to a demonic possession. Yes, that's a pretty succinct. That's good. There won't be too many spoilers given away. I won't give too many away here. But some fun things to note is that this is loosely based on a true story, much like all of the other ones. However, this story in particular is the first trial where the phrase "the devil made me do it" was used as a defense, which is fairly interesting, and it's a great setup. And like I said, the first 10 minutes of this movie are awesome. Killer opening. You have this young boy who's possessed, totally wilding out, going ape shit on this table. And it ends up with a young man who's like, no, devil, get out of this little boy and get into me. And then that happens. Shocker, right? That compels this man to kill. And that's the setup to this film. They're exploring why, as this is now, this compels the man to kill. So he's going to jail and they have to help try to build some kind of defense out of this. Fairly interesting. I don't know too much about how much the Warrens played a role in that young man's defense, but from what I have gathered on what little research I've done, the setup with the young boy when the demon transferring to the young man is part of the quote unquote, I'm doing it very loudly with my fingers here, quote unquote true story, allegedly. This movie definitely takes some liberties as things that aren't mentioned anywhere else. It does connect itself a little bit more to Annabelle from what it looked like as well. And once I heard that, I kind of disliked this movie more. The reason for that is you don't really need to keep sewing all of these things together into a football or into like a macrame ball of garbage. You don't have to keep sewing each fold together. This could have branched out into a quilt. This could have been a whole new revelation and a new addition to the universe, but instead, you're going to just tie things up a little bit more. I didn't care for that one bit. However, there are some gripes. I think the idea of the primary adversary is very interesting, as it is not, and this is a light spoiler, it's not a spirit, which I liked. I like that they're facing something a little bit more on their terms, sort of like an anti-Warren family, which is great. I thought that was a creative way. Franchises like this, to me, cannot stay haunted house films forever. These things all need to evolve. Every horror series has to take you somewhere new a little bit. I had huge problems with The Conjuring 2. I remember liking Conjuring 1 quite a bit, but Conjuring 2 was just a miserable experience to me personally. That film was just loud, constant attempts at scares, and so there was never a genuine scare in that film, in my opinion. It never did anything for me. And while this movie isn't that, it does try to inject a little bit more story. We do get to see Lorraine Warren sort of recreate scenes of where a murder happened, and that's a great scene. You get more Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren, who is always fantastic. I've loved that man. I've been a fan of his for a long time, probably since Watchmen, but he's doing a great performance here too. They're never the issue with this series, by the way. They're easily this series' most strongest points. They're a very believable couple with fantastic chemistry, and I like everything about them. The mythology, the lore, this mythos. It's just the films around them just aren't doing it for me. And I feel like we were close here, but there's just it just gets kind of boring at a certain point. The murder stuff, and again, more spoilers here, but when Arnie, who is possessed by the demon he got from the kid, when he does that murder, it's definitely spiced up a little bit, but it just kind of lays back as we're now into this very fantastical realm of these adversaries. I'm trying to say that without spoiling it the best I can. Made me, honestly, watching this movie kind of made me miss the Insidious films. One thing I liked about those movies, and I'm not the biggest fan, I didn't like them at first, and then they kind of grew on me, but one thing I liked about them was they were very much like this supernatural fantasy. And I liked that a lot, that it was grounded, but then you had this whole thing with the ghost realm. I didn't see the newest one, so I don't know where that one went, but I really liked that sort of dichotomy, that they're kind of doing these capers around the supernatural realm as well, and you get a little bit of taste. It adds a little bit more flavor to the supernatural. I tend to like this stuff more with crazy, creepy beasts and a little bit weirder on ghosts. I like weird things. You guys know what I like here. I think that might be also why Insidious appeals a bit more to me. Like, if 13 Ghosts were to belong in either of these universes, it would definitely be in Insidious, which is why that one tends to capture me a little bit more. It's a little bit more fantastical. My problem with movies like this, and a lot of films in general, is you start out with the claim that it's based on a true story, and a lot of the audience, not all of them, a lot of them, take everything word for word. I was working at a theater when Texas Chainsaw, the prequel, came out. Or not the prequel, the remake. So before that even. And a guy came up to me while I was working. I was like, man, isn't this crazy? I can't believe this happened. This is a true story. I was like, well, it's not like really a true story. He's like, well, no, I know they embellished a little bit, but man, Leatherface is still out there. And I'm just like, holy shit. He wasn't trolling me. This is before that was even a term. He was telling me that he was concerned that Leatherface was still out there. Not to mention the fact that that movie took place like 20, 30 years ago, as if that guy's still going to be alive, right? But the fact that total fiction is real. And so it's something that kind of irks me a little bit with films that take a lot of creative liberties. Now, granted, when you bring up the Warrens, a lot of people always talk about they were charlatans, they were hucksters, blah, blah, blah. So you're already taking their stories and giving them a flight of fancy. I don't know what my point of that ramble was. I think it's just something that I find irksome, to where I almost wish it would have stayed a little bit closer to the source. And as much as I appreciate the adversarial anti-Warrens, I almost wish it found a better or different way to do that. That wasn't so much bigger, I guess. I don't know. Does any of that make sense? Do I make sense? Perhaps I'm possessed too. Ooh, spooky. But anyways, I didn't hate this movie overall. It wasn't an inconvenience, which I find is a very kind thing to say about movies lately, that this film didn't inconvenience me in any way. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't hate it. The first few minutes, though, if you want to watch some pretty cool supernatural stuff, I really liked the first 10 minutes of this movie. It was really cool. There's a scene, there's a couple good scenes in here. I mean, if you're a big fan of the series, you've probably watched it already, but this series, not necessarily for me. I'm not even the biggest fan of supernatural horror. So maybe I'm not even the best person to talk about this. Supernatural horror is not wild and crazy enough for me. If you've got anything that you think is going to float my boat, let me know. There's a couple I like, but for the most part, I find a lot of it to be just, not for me. Anyways, this went on a little bit longer than I expected. I am your host, Full Custom Hot Dog. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Full Custom Hot Dog without the last O, because that's just too long for Twitter. So, thank you all for watching, and until next time. If you like what you see,
I love what I see.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you can watch whatever comes next. And if you like the music you hear, you can follow me on SoundCloud and Spotify. Check the description for links.